Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about what is going on the ground in the courts in California. And this is a tangled web still involving two courts that have a piece of the case that challenges Donald Trump's federalization of the National Guard in LA. Let's start with on the ground, because we're seeing, and we've seen over the weekend, this really diametrically opposed portraits of what's going on there. We had another quiet weekend in LA, as we had a fairly peaceful but very boisterous or well-attended set of protests around the country. But at least last week in LA, there were some episodes of violence and some attacks on police cars and the like. And that's been the excuse for Trump to not yet send in the troops, but federalize the 2,000 or so National Guard of California, which California needs for all kinds of things that they normally do, including now as we head into fire season. But also, California doesn't want to be federalized. So we have here a really stark federal-state conflict about whether federal power should be exercised. That is extremely unusual in the annals of the nation. Right now, what we are talking about is the use of the United States potential power in Title 10 to federalize the National Guard of, say of the Guard in California. You guys work for us now, for me, Donald Trump, and your job is to protect federal property and personnel. It's not to go and be regular law enforcement folks, but that very much chafes California and Gavin Newsom, whose view is, we don't need you guys and you're only fanning the flames. And there's a lot of indication that that's exactly right. We have a situation, whether measured by arrests or episodes that are roiled, that is night and day different from instances, say, in the 1992 post-Rodney King first trial riots or post-Katrina, where really there was a great need for federal law enforcement because the states couldn't handle it. That seems clearly not what's going on now, and it seems clearly Trump trying to federalize the scene, come in as a strong man, especially to this bluest of blue cities, where by some accounts, 10%, a million or so people are undocumented migrants. Okay, I want to go to the legal situation. So the judge in San Francisco, a man named Chuck Breyer, a senior judge, the brother of Justice Stephen Breyer, received the case because California brought it in the Northern District of California around San Francisco, which they can do, and they probably thought they'd be most likely to get a good draw. And Breyer had first very expedited treatment of lickety-split briefing schedule, hearing, and then went into chambers, 85-year-old guy that he is, and came out a few hours later with a 36-page opinion that basically says, you do not have the authority under Title 10, Section 12406, and you don't have the authority because this is not a rebellion. A rebellion has a certain definition. It's a four-part definition under dictionaries that were in place at the time the law was passed. This is not people trying to overthrow the country. By and large, it's not armed. It just doesn't cut it. And importantly, maybe the most important nugget in his opinion is saying it's for the judiciary to decide if there is a rebellion, and not for, as the administration had argued, for the administration to do it in an unreviewed way. All right. The administration immediately moved for a stay, and a motions panel in the Ninth Circuit granted it. Two Trump judges on that three-person judges panel. But what's happened since is this funny kind of suspension between the two cases. The United States goes back to Breyer and says, now that the Ninth Circuit is going to decide whether your preliminary temporary restraining order is valid or not, you should vacate all you're doing. Wait for them and let them decide things first. And Breyer over the weekend said, nah, I don't think so. I don't have to. And he's right that he doesn't have to. All that's in front of the Ninth Circuit right now is whether or not to stay his temporary restraining order. And for really complicated legal reasons that I don't have to go into here, that effort by a court of appeals to stay a temporary restraining order has a lot of procedural hurdles on its own, as opposed to if it were a preliminary injunction. But the Ninth Circuit's going to hold a hearing tomorrow, Tuesday, and they'll decide on that thing that Breyer entered last Thursday. He, in the meantime, is saying, let's keep going. I've set a motion schedule and a hearing schedule. I'll see you in court this Friday, and we will argue about whether to make this a temporary injunction that enjoins things formally in a way that could trigger other appeals. But he says for now, there's no reason to delay, and there's a lot of stuff happening on the ground. I'm keeping the case. I'm moving to this aspect of it. The Ninth Circuit has that aspect of it. Of course, it's possible that the Ninth Circuit, when it has its hearing tomorrow or rules, will expand its stay and say to Judge Breyer, you have to stand down from this other hearing that you are right now going forward with. That could happen because they want to say, we'll figure it all out, and then if need be, send it back to you. But as of now, there are two dual kind of parallel proceedings, and the hearing in the Court of Appeals on Tuesday and back with Breyer on Friday. Now, overall, this is a case, including if and when, I think maybe it would be when it goes to the Supreme Court, that has within it, it's not just important in and of itself, but it's also important generally because Trump is saying, as long as I decide there is a rebellion, I can do whatever I want, and courts may not review that. And the potential implications around the country, we know he wants to do this more and more and more. He's issued an order, in fact, to specifically try to do more of the same in other, he actually says, blue cities where Democrats have let things run roughshod and have these immigration crises, all malarkey. The people that have been arrested to date, almost none of them are violent criminals, under 10%. And it's just sort of raw politics and a power play. Nevertheless, if the Ninth Circuit or the Supreme Court says, go ahead, we're not going to second guess you, then it's really a whole series kind of blanketing the country of similar episodes as are now playing out in LA. So it is a really tangled web right now in the federal courts, in the district court, the Ninth Circuit. If the Ninth Circuit rules against the Trump administration, they'll go immediately to the Supreme Court. And even as, because of the Ninth Circuit stay, events are playing out on the ground and Trump is redoubling and the federalized National Guard is on the scene and totally alienating and enraging locals in Los Angeles and making huge trouble where no trouble need be made. We have the legal landscape playing out also in a way that's almost in lockstep and is going to be affecting it almost in real time. So quite a kind of tumultuous week on the ground and in the courts on this very issue of federalization of National Guard in Los Angeles, which Trump is touting, wants badly, and California, especially with the governor out front, is trying to parry and prevent as forcefully as it can. So it is really a total kind of hurricane of legal and political on-the-ground activity that is going to continue at least for the next several days in Los Angeles. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.